Dr. Michael Oren, former ambassador of Israel to the United States and former deputy minister and Knesset member. Shalom.
Shalom, Rav. How are you?
So first of all, what are your feelings these days after the initial results of the 2020 elections?
I think of the days of being receptive to the president-elect. Joe Biden's a good man. He's an honest man. He is pro-Israel. I worked with him very closely for 5 years that I was ambassador in Washington. But we have to be ready for the fact that there's a different administration with a different policy. And on two issues in particular, on the peace process with the Palestinians, with the Iran nuclear deal, the Biden administration's policies will be different from those of Trump, in some ways very different from those of President Trump, and more similar to those of President Obama. So we're going to have to be prepared for that and be ready to deal with it.
Do you think it'll be important for Biden to show that he's not like Trump in terms of Israel, in terms of our issues?
No, I think it comes from, I don't think, actually, that our issues will be at the top of his agenda, certainly not the Palestinian issue. Joe Biden's going to come into office, he's going to have his plate very, very full. He's got a corona crisis, he's got economic crisis, unemployment, he's got deep political divisions within American society that he's going to want to heal. And even on the level of foreign policy, we're not at the top of his agenda. There's going to be U.S.-Chinese relationship, U.S.-Russia relationship, climate accords, NATO. There's a long list of issues he's going to have to address before he gets to us. I think the one issue that won't wait will be the Iranian nuclear issue. And there he's been under, I think, a significant amount of pressure from former Obama administration officials to renew that agreement. America's with membership in that agreement. He has stated, President-elect Biden has stated on several occasions that he intends to renew America's membership there, in which case it's very important for us to enter into an immediate and intimate discussion with the President-elect and his team about what are Israel's expectations, what are our interests, and even to publish those interests, something we did not do back in 2015 when Obama was president, and enabled the president back then to claim that there was no deal that Israel would accept, which wasn't true. We knew what a good deal looked like, we just didn't want to publish it. A mistake. I think we can rectify it now.
How about the fear in Israel that it's not just Biden? Biden is coming with the ultra, maybe even radical left.
I think it was a source of concern. The Democratic Party has undergone changes. It has become increasingly progressive, and in that progressive wing, there is a part which was deeply disaffected for Israel, even wants to cut off relations with Israel. And yet, we've seen now that two centrists in the Democratic Party have been elected, and I will tell you, of the Democratic frontrunners, these were the two most pro-Israel of them all. They both said expressly that they would never use aid to Israel as a means of coercing Israel to make concessions to the Palestinians or on any other issue. That's very important. And both President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris are deeply committed to the U.S.-Israel strategic alliance. And we have to keep that in mind.
You mentioned that Biden is not Obama. How do you relate to that term, the 8 bad years of Obama? Was it really that different, that bad?
See that gray hair? You see that gray hair? No, Obama was very different. The issues of Israel-Palestine, the Iran nuclear issue, were deeply held ideological issues by President Obama, starting from the first day of his presidency, where the first trip to the Middle East, he basically skipped over Israel. His first major speech abroad was the Cairo speech, June 2009, an hour-and-a-half speech, which changed long-standing American policy without even informing Israel, and many other changes to American policy that were made without any consultation with us, and which we viewed in many cases as not just diplomatic threats, but as strategic threats. So it was a very, very different time. It ended with condemnations in the United Nations. It ended with a nuclear deal, which the vast, vast majority of Israelis view as a strategic threat, even an existential threat. So it's something very, very different. Joe Biden, again, I know him well, is not that type of ideologue. He has a long-standing commitment to Israel, which he belongs to that generation that remembers the 1967 war, remembers the 1973 war. His first visit here was in 1973 as a senator. He met with Golda Meir, was prime minister back then. Barack Obama belonged to a very different generation, came from a different sort of part of American society. His worldview was very much similar to that on American campuses and certain American campuses. I knew that worldview very, very well. Joe Biden is not part of that worldview.
So what should Israel do at this point?
First of all, to congratulate the president-elect. Say mazal tov. America is our ultimate ally. America is our sister democracy. They share our democratic values, and we should respect that system. as they should respect the decision of our voters at the polls too. And having said that, understand that Joe Biden is pro-Israel, Vice President-elect Harris very pro-Israel, and we should be candid and upfront and enter into that type of conversation, which is the type of conversation which best friends can have, and understand, say, listen, we may disagree about this, but this is our interest. This is what we think will work. And that would be extremely important on the Iran issue. We do that, I think we'll be perfectly fine.
Dr. Michael Oren, thank you very much.
My pleasure.